Another World is an artistic masterpiece. But is it a good game? It's Amigos, episode 321. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're going to be talking about Another World.
Yeah, man. I can't believe it's taken us this long to get to this. I'm still baffled at that boat.
Aaron, what's the closest you've ever been to visiting Another World? Or have you visited Another World?
Well, I mostly probably through film. I mean, if I'm honest, the funny thing about it is a game like if you look at the visitation of another existence as it is portrayed in the game today. I mean, there was no space travel. This is more of one of those portal situations where you just walk,
right.
You go in one end, you go out the other, and one would wonder if that ever happened. There was no way you would ever know about it because that person probably would never come back. I will say the guy in today's game, at least he went to a world that had oxygen, for example. If you think about it, you could pop into another world that just has methane or something. You're boned.
It would be a pretty short game if he didn't have oxygen on that world.
Or he could have popped into the world and it's all water, and so he just can't ever surface. He just drowns. He could do that too. But no, have you ever heard of the concept of remote viewing?
Yeah, absolutely. This is where you travel outside of your body and you're looking at things from a third-person perspective.
That's right. It's sort of like incorporeal form, astral projections like that.
Yeah.
I would say that if that stuff and there are various thoughts on the subject of whether that stuff's real or not. But if it is, that would be a neat way to visit worlds like this if you could actually go that far. But no, the closest I've come to visit another world, or my trips to Arkansas, was one, and my trip to Mexico was pretty eye opening. So those are, everything is sort of. I mean, I bet a lot of people get that feeling when they come to West Virginia. Now that I think about it, because we're sort of like we're certainly another state, but we're another world in a lot of ways to the rest of the country. What about you?
That's true. It's funny. I read this and I feel like it's true. Whenever I strap on the old virtual reality goggles, once every couple of years when the fever takes me and I decide to plunk down another couple $100 on a new headset, when I'm inside of those worlds, it's a different experience than when you're looking at something on a screen. And I really believe that your brain sort of creates memories, and you have these sensations that happen while you're inside of a virtual reality experience that also they sort of implant themselves in the same way that real world experiences do, that normal, on-screen viewing experiences don't. I feel like whenever I think back to hanging out in a game like Rec Room, and I'm walking around the area there, I really feel like that's like a real memory that I have, that I was actually in that area. So I would say, any number of virtual reality rooms or worlds, that's probably the closest I've been to actually experiencing another world.
It's an excellent answer, Bo. The virtual reality angle. And there is a virtual reality connection with the game we're playing today, amazingly. But I agree, and I have been a cheerleader of virtual reality. I'm not convinced we're there yet, but I have enjoyed the times I've gotten to play with the VR with Brent's big setup over there. It's a lot of fun, and I can absolutely see where you could simulate being on another world. And sort of trick your own brain in a lot of ways. So that's a neat idea. But I just don't think something like Rec Room, as much fun as that is, and I've had to go with that. I mean, it's not really like being on it is sort of like being on another world, but not in the most dramatic way like today's game.
Sure, we've got a ways to go before we're fully immersed into VR. But
yeah, I agree.
I think that we should stop thinking about the future and start looking back at the past and taking a look at what's new. What's old is new in the world of Amiga news, Aaron.
Nice segue, Boat.
Amiga news.
All right, Aaron. You know, it's getting to be that time, the time of the year when Ami West rolls around on the calendar.
The big time.
And it is coming up this weekend, Aaron. This weekend, it's finally arrived. Sacktown's finest gather in Ashburn Boulevard, the Holiday Inn. That's where it's all going down, Aaron. It's all going down at the Holiday Inn in Sacramento.
Yeah, man.
Now, Aaron, of all of the events going on at Ami West this year, what are you most excited about to hear about?
Well, I will say I think the raffle is going to be a lot of fun because we could participate in that. You know, I was just thinking that someone could be sitting at Ami West right now watching this very show. They could be watching it right now. So hello, if you're there. I know it doesn't start till tomorrow, but I'm sure I know some of the luminaries have begun to gather. It's like the quickening. You know what I'm saying? They know where to go for the time draws near. I know our good buddy, the Dougster, will be, AKA Tin Mark, will be giving a little gimmick up there. So Doug, he's not long-winded or anything, but he's a speech-giving son of a gun. So he'll be up there. I'm looking what they've got. Some of the exhibitors they've got here. The Brewing Academy, who they're based out of California.
I love those guys.
Those guys are genius types. You hear about them all the time on the Pixel Gaiden show. In fact, I think they've even visited down there. So that'll be kind of fun. So there's always good stuff going on. Hey, there's a guy here called the Sack Guy. So I'd like to see him. What's that all about? That's what his name is. But they're going to have game competitions. I think they're going to have some arcade. It's going to be big fun, Boat. They're going to have the Amigas stretching from hither and yarn. That Holiday Inn's never been so classically computered up as it will be for the next several days, Boat. And I will say, for those of you that are interested, if you go over to the Ami West webpage, which is amiwest.net, you can get it on all the goings-on. It's got everything here to let you know what's happening. For example, reception and setup is happening as we speak, Boat. It's going on. The show opens tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. That's Saturday, October 16th. And they will run this sucker into the dirt, October 17th, 2021. They'll start at 10 a.m. and they close when they pry the Amiga out of their cold, dead hands Sunday evening. And then, of course, the big banquet tomorrow night. I wouldn't mind being sitting at the table for that bad boy because, some stories are going to be exchanged. The wine will be there. It'll be a good time. So check them out. They've got a full slate of online events as well, Boat, and we're real happy to be putting them over.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I tell you who else is cheerleading hardcore for old Ami West is the one and only 10-minute Amiga Retrocast.
That's
Doug
right.
is getting ready. He's getting ready to go.
Doug will be there. In fact, Doug is there because I've been following his Twitter. He's been making the rounds, the California rounds. He shot a nice picture today from the Golden Gate Park there, Bo. You ever been over to the Golden Gate Park?
I was there this summer.
It's a beauty.
I can tell you this about the Golden Gate Park, Aaron.
Yeah.
We left San Jose, our Airbnb. It was about 85 degrees. We arrived at the Golden Gate Park. We arrived at the Golden Gate Bridge. It was 45 degrees, Aaron.
What happened there? Is it the wind comes blowing off the gimmick there? Yeah, I've heard that.
It was so cold. It was unbelievable.
Do you think those dudes could have swam from Alcatraz? What do you think? Did they make it or did they drown, Bo?
No chance. They went down like a sack of potatoes.
Well, that's, yeah. You ever swam in real cold water before?
Yeah. In Boy Scouts, I used to do that all the time.
Yeah, you ever do that old mile swim up at scout camp?
I've been in that lake, never for the mile swim. I would have died, 100% chance.
I did it, buddy. And I'll tell you something. That's where the old blubber paid off. But anyway, the Dougster is in town. This is a video where he's talking about what computers he's getting ready to go for this thing. And, of course, he's bringing all of his wacky stuff up there. It should be a good time, and Doug will be ready to go for this bad boy. So, yeah, get a chance to check out his video. You'll know what he's bringing out there tomorrow.
I believe that Doug traverses something like 17 hours. It's a very, very long drive for him to get up from Arizona up to Northern California.
Yeah.
So if you see Doug, make sure you say hi to him and you thank him for making the journey because that's a long trek to go for his love of Amiga.
If anyone is out there at Ami West right now, I will give you a shiny quarter to go up to tell Doug that you're not down with AGA. Just see what he says. And also, if you want to hurt yourself, get on Doug's Twitter and listen to him sing. Which is he performed this one of he tried to outboat the boat just today, so not good. But yeah, he's going to be there, Boat. It should be happening.
All right, Aaron, we move on to some pretty exciting news for all those fans out there of the CD TV. You know, it seems like the CD TV doesn't get as much love as the A1200 or the A1000. And
Yeah,
it's
it's not as
time,
good.
Aaron. Well, it's time to make it better.
Yes,
Okay.
it is. I agree.
And what's happened is they've actually released a new OS, Aaron, for the CD TV. This is OS 2.35. And this thing introduces a whole bunch of improvements, but probably the biggest improvement is that you can actually use it to read CD-ROMs that were previously unreadable. For example, if you had an Amiga magazine CD cover disc, up until now, you were not able to stick that into the CD TV and have it run. But guess what? Now you can. Thanks to the fine folks over at, I believe it's called CD TV World, something like that.
That's outstanding. And this video,
you can burn yourself a fresh EEPROM, stick it in your CD-TV, and bam, away you go. Tons and tons of new functionality for your CD-TV area. Now, were you ever tempted at all by the CD-TV?
listen, I would buy one right this second if I was one sitting here. Now, I ragged on it just now for saying it was no good, and it was not. It was a travesty. However, you can see what they were going for. And for once, I will say Commodore was ahead of the game, like way ahead. Like this right here could have been a contender. But much like the CDI, like America wasn't ready for one of these deals. It wasn't time. And Microsoft had misfires too. You know, web TV, and they try to get all this crap console on your TV stands. It wasn't time. And this thing was unfortunately just, I think it was a little underpowered for the job, but I don't think that's even what it was. The price was to the moon, so there's that, you know. But nowadays, boy, it'd be a lot of fun to have one to tinker with.
And I tell you what, the CD-TV is a darn sexy looking machine too. I love the black exterior and the LED panel on the front of it. I love the way that it looks. Yes. Maybe one day, Aaron, you'll come over and I'll be like, hey, check this thing out. And there'll be a CD-TV there.
And then I'll knock you over the head with a candlestick and take that sucker back to the pad. That's the way I like to do it. So I hope you get one, Boat.
All right, Aaron, we move on to some gaming news. That's right, Aaron. Turbo Tomato is a game that we covered a while back. This is one of these battle arena games. If you picture like a top-down game where you are just inducing all sorts of mayhem on your friends. This is it's been out for a while. It's got a major update. They fixed a lot of bugs in it. This is a game, of course, published by Bitmap who put out all kinds of awesome games for a bunch of the systems that we cover. So if you have bought this game and you want to update it, that's the great thing about living in 2021. You can head on over to their site and you can download the newest edition and plug that into your computer and go. I guess if you have the disc version, you just rewrite over the disc with the newest version in your set. So
I do. Looking at the box version, look at that. They've got a tomato red disc to go along with the boat.
Yeah,
that's a good angle.
I love it. I love the packaging on this thing.
Good
so
packaging,
if you bought Turbo Tomato and you want to make sure you're using the most up-to-date version, head on over to their site. Of course, you can click the link up in the upper right corner that's slightly obscured by the rotating Amiga News logo, but you can check out that link. That's got all the news links on it, gather.com/Amigos podcast. And you can click on the Indie Retro News link, which will take you over to Bitmap Soft's or the itch.io page where you can download this update.
What do you think about the price on this boat? We usually discuss these 25 pounds for the big dog. You get the whole enchilada.
Yeah, 25 pounds for the big dog is not bad.
That's not
25 pounds for a digital-only edition. Yeah.
So I don't think
digital only. This is 10 pounds for the digital. That's right on the money as far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah,
$10 for a digital download, 25 for a box edition. I'd buy games all day long if they were priced like that.
You know, I paid $20 this week for a digital download. It's probably the most I've ever paid. You know, so I mean, yeah, this is a good deal.
Yeah. More gaming news, Aaron. RoboCop. The arcade hits just keep right on coming. This, I believe, is part of the game jam that is going on that I think Amiga Cami is in charge of. Yet another arcade conversion heading our way. This is an AGA version of RoboCop, Aaron. Now, were you a big fan of this game in the arcade?
Well, you know, I did. No. I mean, I didn't hate it. I liked it. You know, it's got that kind of Bad Dudes feel to it. You know, that's got that kind of graphical setup. I like the look of it. I wanted to be good at it, but as we've discussed, I know we've covered this, but the bare minimum on the spectrum, I didn't do too good. It's a hard game. But I will say this looks real nice, doesn't it? I mean, look at the graphics on that; those are beauties.
Yeah, and of course, this comes to us from Indie Retro News as well. And Neil writes that the coder has posted some updates. He says that you should not expect the level of progress compared to the dev experience of McGeezer and JOTD. These are the sort of the shining stars in the Amiga port multiverse. But this guy's doing pretty well. He says the current engine is running in 64 colors. It's got a parallax. It's got 4x fetch mode, Aaron. If it's got 4x fetch mode,
I got that. That.
So if you're interested in checking out the development, you can follow it all on EAB. EAB, just look for the RoboCop AGA thread, and Daniel Alsop is in charge of this thing. He's over in Northumberland in the UK, Aaron.
And a shout out to Daniel. And listen, man, work at your own pace, brother. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You take as long as you need, but you are off and running. I think it looks real nice, but.
Aaron, there's a new YouTube documentary about the Amiga CD32 that was just launched a couple days ago. This is from a YouTuber that I had not heard of before. This is from Lady Decade, who is a British lass. And she goes over the complete history. I watched the majority of this thing today of the CD32, talking about the environment that it was released in. Of course, its troubled backstory, its troubled launch, and its troubled demise. She doesn't go over a whole lot of new stuff, but she does a great job of the audio visual work. I mean, there is stuff going on all the time on the screen. There's got to be 10,000 video clips in this thing, interspersed with her commentary, some great sound effects and music from the CD32. It's a very fine effort. If you're new to the CD32 or new to the Amiga and you want to get just a 20-minute rundown of what the CD32 was all about, I highly suggest you give this thing a watch.
Yeah, Late Decade's very popular. I've seen a lot of stuff, and the CD32 is the most. I will say that's not true. The Amiga 600 is the comeback story of all time. All right, but the CD32 has got to be a close second. These were duds. I mean, straight up duds. Don't let people. I mean, no one was like clamoring for them. But they have been augmented and enhanced in 2021 to the point where these are your top shelf. They're in demand, brother. And when we saw the Nerd destroy one of these a couple years ago, I was appalled because he was being a smartass about it. But at the end of the day, here he is playing it today, and these are far more useful than they ever were upon original release. So you need to step back and pay homage. Because the community has taken these things on their shoulders and they've lifted them up to greatness, Bode.
Yes, absolutely. All right, Aaron, and we finish up our Amiga News Roundup today with Chris Edwards and his new adventures with this terrible fire accelerator. Now, Aaron, you've watched this video.
I did
Tell
watch
us about
this
it,
one.
Will you?
Well, it's the usual fare from Chris. Lots of wackery. He gets in there. And it's basically he buys this thing. It's the TF-1230 with it's an accelerated graphics or accelerated card for the 1200 with 64 megs of memory on it, and it's just him installing it. The trials and tribulations, Boat, when you try to get a card into these 1200s, and I've been here. I mean, they could not, there's no spare space. I mean, you have to have tiny little fingers to get in there like a child and just to get these things to go into the freaking cartridge slot. And then what's worse is if there's any trouble, you know what that means? Totally disassemble this sucker, totally pull the thing back out. He did everything I always do. I always take the back off, try to put it in. Then I always give up. Take the front off, take the keyboard off, use two hands to violently smash the thing in. He goes a step further on his cards. He takes a freaking a nail file and just files off some of the plastic to make it easier to get in. Now, I never thought of that. I'd be afraid to do that, but he did it. And then he shows some stats on it. This is a nice looking little card. I think he ended up saying he paid $160 for it. I believe was the price. And It's a great card. The memory in it doesn't interfere with the PCMCA slot, so you can use the PCMCA slot freely if you're one of the people that use that, and you're not in trouble with that weird 8 meg limit thing. The downside of it is it doesn't have an FPU on it. For most people, well, I don't know. For most people, it probably won't matter if you're just going to play games and stuff on it. But then again, the extra power that it gives you probably won't matter a whole lot if you're doing that. The 1200 plays most everything pretty well. But, by God, you've got a big-time processor, a bunch of memory. You can go do what you want. As long as you're not going to do anything that involves math, sort of like me. As long as I don't do anything involving math, although there's speed involved. But, yeah, it's pretty good. Anyway, it doesn't end. He runs into some wackery, and then the video stops, and there's a part 2 coming. So we'll see what happens. I'm sure it'll be amusing anyway it goes. So, yeah, check it out if you're interested in this type of card or just watching someone fumble around installing this stuff that's not you. That's the thing I like, because I've done all this stuff, but I'd rather watch someone else do it so I can laugh at them.
Yeah, I like to live vicariously through others' foibles rather than cause them myself.
That's why I hang out with you, ironically. There you go, bud.
All right, Aaron. Well, that's going to wrap up this week's news update. So we should probably give a shout out to the one, the only RetroRewind.ca.
Bam,
now, Aaron, you said
buddy.
You've been talking to Frank. He's been cluing you in on what's been going on up there. Tell us about it.
Well, there's an upcoming product. It's not out yet, and it probably won't be cheap because of what it does. But he actually mentioned it on his Twitter a while back, and we had a brief chat about it. And it's basically a bench power supply for that you can hook up multiple computers on at once, like a Commodore 64 and Amiga, and it's a bench power supply. It's got all the outputs on the front for that you can hook up your various machines to. It'll be a nice little addition to someone that does this stuff a lot on a desk or a bench. So that would be nice. And that's one thing Frank does. He's the kind of guy that goes in there. Like, no one knew that was going to come out, but he decided he needed one, and lo and behold, now it exists. And that's the kind of stuff you're going to get. Frank if he needs it, if he sees a need for it, he'll come up with it, man. And so that should be getting released sometime in the next couple months. But
you got any guesses on what the price tag on that?
No guesses yet. He told me it wasn't going to be cheap, and you can understand why, given the amount of hardware that's going to be involved inside the actual box. But I mean, his idea of super expensive and my idea of super expensive are pretty different. So when he says it's not going to be cheap, it still probably will be incredibly cheap as far as I'm concerned, because most of his prices I think are madness. His recapping at the pricing he gives you to do these recaps is astoundingly low. If you have a computer in the Commodore range, he will take care of you right away, and you can send it in, and he will recap it for you. And his stuff is solid gold. He knows all the tricks. He's got all the skills, both skills to pay the bills. Frank has been featured with alongside big time like world renowned hardware guys over the years, as you know, Boat. So it's not Frank's just not some random Canadian that stumbled out of the wilderness. I mean, he knows this stuff, Boat.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can check out all of his fine products and services over at RetroRewind.ca. And when you're over there, if you pick out 1 or 2 or 5 things to buy, make sure you use the promo code Amigos10 when you check out, and you can save 10% off your order. We do appreciate Retro Rewind for being an official sponsor of the Amigos.
Yes, sir.
Aaron, let's talk about Another World.
Oh, man. I've been waiting, Boat. So it's time to get into it, Boat. Another World, a game that I'm baffled that we've covered. I thought we'd covered every heavy hitter there was, Boat. But here's one that we missed. It stunned me. When we found out that we had never covered this, I could not believe it. I still can't believe it. I went and looked through. I looked for my old notes on it, and that's the only time I finally realized that we'd never done it because I didn't have any. I was like, "Holy smokes, Boat! It's amazing." So let's get into it, Boat. Another World. Now in the States, this was called Out of This World. This was released on the Amiga in '91, and then was released on other consoles and computers on down the line, which we'll get to that in a little bit. Developed by Delphine, but really it was developed basically by a guy, which we'll get to, and was published by Delphine and US Gold. Most of the world got it US Gold. Delphine did it out in France. One-player game, multiple languages. This game was the brainchild I mean, this was the one-man show with just a tiny with the music and sound effects being held by a friend. This was a fellow named Éric Chahi. Is that how you would pronounce that boat? Chahi. Chahi. Éric is sort of a wonderkind, I believe, boat, because he had
sort of a wonderkind. Yes,
he had a vision.
Sort of.
You know, this is one of those times when we've got synergy with ARG Presents, boat, and I had to laugh about this. Me and Brent did a show on the Auric 1 long ago, right? The Auric is another computer from the UK, and it was big in France. And Éric here got his start on the Auric with a game we covered on that very show called Doggy. You know, and even in this game, this very simple game for the Auric, you could see flashes of brilliance and certainly flashes of an artistic element, the likes of which you don't normally see in gaming. Right.
The only thing I remember about that show is Brent's various pronunciations of the word doggy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was like doggy.
Yeah, I know. What can I say to him?
I loved it.
Anyway, you may know on the Amiga, he really only did this and Future Wars. Future Wars, of course, we covered a while back, which the very interesting adventure game. I'm gonna call it point and click, where you it had beautiful graphics. It was a pretty interesting game, very bizarre plot. So this game, to put it mildly, got a few ports. Boat,
yeah, couple,
yeah. So get this, boat. And I'm not going to go over all these, but it got ported to all the Android OS stuff, the Apples, all the handhelds and the Macs, the whole 9 yards, the Jag, of course the STE, the Xbox One. They've released anniversary versions of this. The version that came out after the Atari and Amiga versions was right out. It was the DOS version. Then they released subsequent versions for Windows and even Tandy. They had a special version. They had these on the Pocket Palm tops and all that stuff that all the Sega consoles got, including a Dreamcast version that had his blessing when it was made, and he allowed them to use the files they needed for it. So he's okay with that. And the PlayStation 3, the PlayStation 4, the Vita, these all got ports of this. Even the GBA got an unofficial port, which he smiled down on, his blessing. And this even came to the Game Park 32, which
wow,
I was surprised they got a port over from that. I'd be interested to know what they ported that one from. But it did get a port. Of course, you could play some emulators in it too, so you could have probably played another version. So this game, like I said, this fella had done Future Wars, and so he had some noteworthy success with that game. It was a pretty popular game, and so it was time to work on this. And he decided that he was going to go down the road of developing this. The development of this, and since you've seen the documentary, and I'm sure some of this is old hat to you, but it was interesting listening to him talk about developing this game, because he almost sounded like that he sort of came up with a lot of it like on the fly when he got to that part of the game. Is that the way it came off from what you watched?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so this was almost a stream of consciousness game. He had saw what previous Amiga games had done with this certain type of graphic that he uses in this, because it's heavily compressed. And so you can fit a lot more on a disc using these sorts of graphic tricks. And it had never been used in an action game. It had only been used in like a point-and-click games. And so he decided he's going to make an action game using this sort of the graphics that this thing has, and sat down to do it. Again, like I said, he made this he sort of came up with stuff on the fly originally, and we'll get into the plot of this in a minute, but there were huge original parts of this game that weren't involved in his opening thoughts. There was no friend in the game, for example. There wasn't even a gun in the original version of it, so a lot of stuff changed. Now,
right. Well, and again, I'm going to refer several times to, he gives a talk that's over an hour long at the Game Developers Conference in 2011. And if you're at all interested in learning about this game from the horse's mouth, as it were, I highly suggest you watch this, because he goes into the entire process. And like you said, this was an iterative thing where he started out and he's like, okay, I'm going to make a game about a guy that's going to go to another world, and I want to tell a movie like story.
Yeah.
And then he started writing it and basically wrote the plot of the game and the mechanics of the game as he was going along. Which is maybe part of the reason why this game took 2 years to develop. It was an extremely long process. So yeah, absolutely.
It's a crazy way to write a game.
Yeah.
I guess it worked for him. So before we get real deep into development, let's talk about the gameplay on this. So the game starts off with, and if you haven't seen this scene, you haven't been in the Amiga very long. Probably, I could say without argument, the most known and oft played opening cutscene in the history of the computer. Would you have a problem with that, Bode?
It is by far the greatest opening scene to a game I've ever seen.
Yeah,
it's number one with a bullet for me. I don't think I've ever seen something more cinematic, more impressive, and more something that makes you excited to play the game, especially because of the fact that it uses no words.
Yeah.
It's entirely sound effects and music driven.
So the opening of this game, a fellow rolls up in front of a building in a Ferrari 228 GTO. That's what I've read here. It's really sort of undeterminable by me. I'm not a car guy. And walks into a building and goes through a rigmarole to go down an elevator to get in this big control room. The guy's name, coincidentally, was Lester Knight Chaikin. That's the official guy's name.
Okay.
This guy rolls in. He goes down the elevator, and he sits down at a huge console and starts typing in some stuff. And you can glean this from watching what he's typing. He's sitting at the console for a particle accelerator, and so he's preparing to do an experiment in the particle accelerator, and he's doing just what you would expect a guy to do. And in the meantime, the camera cuts back to the outside shot, and the wind's picking up, and a storm is blowing in. And as this guy begins his experiment, sure enough, a lightning bolt streaks down and it strikes the building he's in. And a spark of electricity jumps into the particle accelerator chamber and sort of chases around the particle acceleration experiment, whatever that thing is in there. And eventually, the two meet at the console, and the console blows up, and big chunk of it just disappears. And that is how the game begins. Boat, when you first saw this, what'd you think about this? I mean, I don't know how far into the Amiga's lifespan you were before you finally saw this the first time out.
Well, I remember seeing this game when it was released on the Super Nintendo. And I remember thinking that it just looked so different than any other game that was out at the time. I mean, this was a 2D side-scrolling sort of, I was just looking at it in a magazine. It looked like a platformer, but again, you saw these cutscenes and still frame, and you're like, man, this looks like a movie. This looks like something that could come out of a movie. And when I fired that up this week, like I said, whenever you're watching that opening cutscene, you're thinking, man, I mean, this could be something right out of Hollywood. It's amazing, and it shows you because he started out with this concept of, this is how I'm going to start the game. And the story was always first, maybe not necessarily all of the details, but like, this is what I'm going to create. Plus the fact that this guy is undoubtedly, one of the great video game artists of all time in terms of the quality of the work. When you watch him using the Pixel engine, and by the way, he sort of created the language that this game is coded in.
Yeah.
It's a cross between, a basic like language and assembly language. And basically, the way that he drew these pixels were that he could manipulate the pixels on the screen, and it would change the code on the fly as he was doing it. Genius level stuff.
Yeah.
And when you watch him manipulate these, like, he starts with a blank screen, and he recreates that opening scene with the light from the car flashing on the side of the building just by manipulating pixels. Manipulating the polygons. It's amazing what you can do with flat shaded polygons. I think this is pretty much like the apex of this particular drawing style.
The thing that gets me from this, it's the most complex, simple looking thing you'll ever see. That's what it's. it's almost like like a watercolor. I mean, that kind of where it's like they take these kind of broad strokes and they make it look awesome. It's hard to explain if you haven't seen it. You also should probably know that in the spirit of a game like Prince of Persia, they used a rotoscoping technique. In fact, I read that he had his brother run around the backyard to capture a lot of the footage, sort of like Prince of Persia did. Did he mention that in the talk?
See, it's actually him. It's him.
Yeah, I read he had done some of himself.
He taped himself. He taped himself running around and doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
But he gave himself red hair because he didn't want it to look too much like him, because he was going to have to draw and animate 8 billion different ways that he's going to die. And he didn't want it to look too much like him because it would make him uncomfortable.
I could see that. And I will say the if you combine that rotoscoping technique with the flat shaded polygon look, it's really remarkable. It's almost like you're playing a painting or something.
Now it is interesting to note that, you know, that people automatically go right to rotoscoping when they look at this game, just like they did Prince of Persia. But he said that he was actually disappointed with the Amiga's ability to do rotoscoped things, and he ended up only shooting about 6 scenes in the entire game that were rotoscoped, and everything else was just polygon animation.
Well, I mean, you really wouldn't have to shoot a whole lot, because really, mostly it's just the sequences of movement, I'd say, would be the really only thing you have to worry about.
Like I said in the talk, he talks about how he was disappointed with the way that the Amiga handled rotoscoping. He wanted to do more, but he just wasn't happy with the results. I guess compared to traditional animation rotoscoping, where you'd have feature films where everything was rotoscoped, you know, like the Heavy Metal movie and stuff like that. So but you know, he talks about the scene with the gun, you know, he reaching down and grabbing the gun, that was rotoscoped and stuff like that.
Really? I wouldn't even have thought about that one being a one to see.
Yeah, that was rotoscoped.
Live and learn. So once you getting back to the actual game proper, once you are just blown up, suddenly, and this is a great angle here, suddenly you're underwater along with the big chunk of console, and then the game begins and you've got to start moving. And this game is not a game that holds your hand. If you mill around too long, you instantly get killed. When you get out of the water, if you mill around in front of the pool you're near, you instantly get killed. And when you take off running, little leech worms that are around you, if you get too near one, you're instantly killed. You're going to hear the words instantly killed a lot in this game, because to me, it's funny. When I was reading him talk about making this game, he had mentioned the graphics and that he was very impressed with the amount of graphics that got put into the Dragon's Lair port on the Amiga. He didn't actually mention anything about the gameplay. He was very inspired by that. But I have to wonder, because this game, it reminds me an awful lot of a game like Dragon's Lair, because in a lot of ways, this is a game where you have to memorize the scenes to get past them. And when you die, you just do them again.
This is the next logical evolution of the Dragon's Lair play mechanic.
Yeah. I think you nailed it. I think that's exactly what it is. I mean, it's not a bad thing. But no. You know, you're gonna have to be prepared. I just covered a game on ARG called Mirror's Edge, and Mirror's Edge handles death the exact same way that this game does. You die, and then you just start back at the last checkpoint. You go again. You try to get past the scene. You die. Start back to the next checkpoint. And by the time you get past that scene, you've gleaned enough knowledge to where you can probably get past it again in the future. You know, now not every scene's like that, but a lot of scenes. When you first appear in the world and you get out of the pool and you take off and you get past the leech creatures, you're confronted with this creepy beast. It's a very scary beast. There's a cutscene where he kind of falls in front of you and roars. This beast is awesome. And so the whole first part of the game is you trying to get away from the beast.
Well, I wanna say something.
Yeah.
This game, for all of its promising starts in probably the worst way it could have. The way that you enter the world, you get this awesome cutscene. You go down into the pool, you swim out of the pool, you get out of the pool, you go to the first screen, and what's the first challenge you have to overcome? You have to use low kick and low leg sweep to destroy these slugs. Okay? And these slugs are freaking annoying, because guess what? The hit detection in another world, it ain't great. It's not good. This is not the game's strong suit.
No, in fact, I agree. Those things are the worst enemy.
Starting that game with this sequence was a huge, huge mistake.
Yeah.
Now in the talk, he talks about how he wanted to vary the pace of the game. So you start out with a slow, quote unquote, slow action sequence where you're essentially stepping on the little worm guys from Eraserhead. And then the beast, flings himself down into the scene and you got to run away. Okay. That's no good. What you should have had is just run into the beast right away. You walk across the screen, you're checking out this other world, and all of a sudden, boom, the beast is there, and you've got to run away. That's how you start the game, getting your pulse pounding. I wasted so much time trying to defeat those two because there's two full screens full of those leech creatures,
and they fall off the ceiling in different places.
Yeah, there's no reason to have that in the game. That is easily the worst part of this game for me, because I got pretty far in the game after that, and I never had the amount of trouble that I had in that very first sequence. And I can only imagine all the people that bought this game that were so frustrated by that sequence, because guess what? When you die, it's not as if you just start right there, right at the beginning of the leash sequence. No, you've got to crash down into the water. You got to swim out of the water. You got to climb out of the pool, and then you got to go to the next screen. Yeah. That doesn't seem like a lot, but when you do that 20 or 30 times, you've eaten up an hour of gameplay and you've achieved nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Now, listen, everything you said is 100. This is not the perfect game, okay? And we're going to praise this game a lot, all right? But let's call it what it is. This is one of the all-time worst opens for a good game, because it's too hard, and it's monotonous, and it's almost it's random at points. It's just stupid. And your guy looks like a geek walking around kicking these stupid worms. Like, I agree. I mean, I would have had a sequence where you learn how to jump and stuff, give you a little bit of time to figure out what's going on. And then you could confront the big beast. The beast chase is cool. I like that.
Yeah, the beast chase is great.
And the worst part of it is, like, all this stuff happens with an awesome backdrop of these mountains. The pool looks awesome. There's a sky, that looks awesome. And even when you start the level, you can see the beast off in the distance watching you. So know the beast.
And that's one of the things that
he
he talks about, and that's one of the things that's the genius of this game, is that setting the action on a 2D plane allows the author to show you things about the story in the foreground and the background in ways that you couldn't in a 3D game. And this happens throughout the entire course of the game. You're going to see action going on in front of you that you can't directly interact with, but it makes you feel like you're living in a world where stuff is going on all the time.
Yeah, and I will say that happens in this game time and time again. Where you'll be involved in a sequence, and then you can see below you or above you or around you, there may be a whole other chase scene going on with your buddy, or he may be underground, or the guards may be running from one level to come to the level where you are. It's quite brilliant, and it gives this game it fleshes out the world a lot. I mean, it makes it look, it's much more visually interesting than most games. I mean, but this game really does operate on a sort of a whole different level from most video games.
And again, when you have an artist that is a coder, it's like Sammy Davis Jr. It's like a triple threat.
Yeah.
And you don't get that a lot. Normally you got your coder and you've got your guy that does the art. And when you've got a one man's vision, and that one man is pretty close to a genius, you're going to end up with something spectacular. And from a graphics standpoint, and from a storytelling standpoint, this game is spectacular.
Now, I don't think we need to go through all the various points in this game. And I don't know about you, but you've seen me play this more than a few times. I'm not the best at this game. In fact, I'm not that good. I would classify this game as a difficult game. It's funny because I kept reading that a lot of people on the Amiga complained it was too easy. I'd like to meet these people.
A lot of people on the Amiga complain every game is too
easy. This one I did not think. But, of course, this is one of those games that if you played it enough, you could be real good at it. There's no doubt. But
here's the thing about this game. This game, like you said, it's Dragon's Lair. Okay? You have to memorize. There's probably, I don't know how many scenes there are, 50 or 60 scenes. Every screen is a scene, just like a scene in Dragon's Lair. And almost every screen has a trick. Every screen has something that's going to kill you, something you've got to move faster than, something you've got to avoid, or something you've got to shoot. And the trick to beating this game is memorizing every single one of those things. Is that a good play mechanic? In my mind, no. I like the idea of being able to approach problems in different ways and be able to find different solutions to problems. I don't like trial and error. To me, that's not something that I enjoy in games, especially in action games. I'd rather see things that don't kill you immediately, because what happens is you become so desensitized to the game that you no longer, I don't know. I got to the point where I was enjoying the beauty of the game, but I wasn't enjoying playing the game because I was just sitting around waiting. Okay, what's the thing that's going to kill me on this screen? Go ahead and get it over with so I can see what it is. Then I can load my last checkpoint, slowly make my way back to that screen, and then try to avoid it. And you've got to do that 3 or 4 times until you figure out the exact way that you have to avoid it, and then you move on to the next scene. Rinse and repeat for however long it takes you to beat this game.
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of cleverness in this game in terms of
there's a tremendous amount of
what they set up
absolutely.
that happens that you participate in, and the fact that you team up with an alien from the home world there and go through it. It's a lot. I like the aspect of having a buddy, the whole 9 yards. There's a lot of things I like about it, but you're not wrong, and I can't bury you for what you're saying, because it's difficult, and it requires you just know what's going on. I mean, there are certain areas where you just have to instantly start making a shield with your gun, or you're going to die. Now, let's talk about the gun real quick. Right out of the gate, once you're captured, put in this cage, you escape with a buddy. Now, this buddy will be with you on and off to the rest of the game, and he introduces you to a pistol. The pistols in this are pretty neat. They've got 3 modes of firing, basically. You can just shoot them. You can hold the button down and create like a laser wall in front of you. And then you can hold the button down for a long time and create like a mega shot that'll go through a wall, blow a wall up. And so this is what you go through the game with. And it's very strategic, Bo, because you have to occasionally make a wall up and then try to take out your opponent's walls or gunners.
I love the gun in this game.
Yeah,
I think the
it's
gun
awesome.
feels great.
It looks nice too. The way it operates.
It looks nice. I love the 3 modes of firing.
Yeah.
I think the whole like wall ideal concept is great. Again, I understand, like, it's sort of like Prince of Persia. You don't start Prince of Persia with the sword, and when you get the sword, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So I understand why you start the game with the gun, but when I got the gun, the game became a lot more fun.
Yeah, well, you get it, and you get it pretty early.
You get it pretty early on. You do.
Now, the whole premise of this game is you're basically continuously running. You're almost always being chased, or at least trying to escape. And it takes you underground. It takes you up into like the up in the Citadel. There's even a point where you're in like a bathhouse with a bunch of the female aliens from the world in there in various stages of undress. Presumably, you don't know what they look like, so who knows?
Actually, here's a funny story about that. So one of the few instances of censorship in that game was that when this scene occurs, you are in a tank. This game takes you. I mean, this game I know I've said it a million times. This game is so cinematic. There are set pieces in this game. And one of the set pieces is that you and your buddy get in this tank and you roll into a gladiatorial arena and you're shooting and there's stuff going on. And then you get ejected from this tank in escape pods. The escape pods land in this area where the female aliens are bathing, okay? And they're naked. You can see some butt crack going on. And guess what? The old Super Nintendo and Genesis censors didn't like butt crack. So what he had to do was, one of the few times he had to censor the game, he had to go into his image editor and remove 3 pixels from the backside of every female alien to make it look like they were wearing a bathing suit.
I love it. I love that. That's great. So with all that said, clearly there's a lot of diverse gameplay elements in this that are a lot of fun. There's some light puzzle elements you use with the pistol. The pistol can be used not to shoot through doors and also just dig big chunks of cave walls, stuff like that. So you can do a lot with it. I will say the enemies are very well versed in the use of these guns, and they will clip you at a heartbeat, brother, if you're not ready to go, because the enemies in this are not idiots. They're some of your smarter enemies, I think, that are around. So the game eventually gets released, and I should mention, you mentioned it took him 2 years. I read a little clip from a magazine that said, and he may have covered this, boat. He said after 17 months of development, he was only finished with a third of the game. And so they were like, "Listen, you need to go faster." And so he changed up some stuff. And eventually, when he was trying to get this published, some people wanted him to turn this into a point-and-click game, if you could believe that.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and of course, he was like, that would be really tough. So that ended up not happening. So anyway, the game got released on the Amiga and the Atari ST first, and it got over like Rover. It was basically the game of that year. Allegedly it sold over 1 million copies in the 90s, and this was before all the various mobile versions and anniversary versions. I mean, this game's been released to the nines, and there's been packs where they packed it with Heart of Darkness stuff. They've done a Heart of the Alien. There's been a lot of various releases on this thing, so we can assume that it sold in excess of 1 million copies, and after that, you don't really know how many it sold. It sold a ton, though. It was very, very popular in the magazines with critics. It was named the number one top new Amiga game of 1992 by Amiga World. It won the award for most innovative new game of the year from EGM. Get this, Boat. In 2012, it was one of the first 14 titles added to the video game art exposition at the Museum of Modern Art.
That's well deserved. I'll tell you that.
It got a nomination for let's see here. Got a nomination for Classic Game of the Year at the 2014 National Academy of Video Game Trade Reviewers. Long story short, it was over. Okay, it did great. It makes a lot of lists. A couple people have named this the best video game of all time. A lot of times when you hear something like that, you're like, yeah, right. But this is one of those games where you kind of stand back and you can say, well, I can see at least where they're coming from, if for anything. And so you knew when it got over that well or initially that it would get ported. That's how all these ports happen. Now the ports didn't all just come out at the same time. They sort of leaked out over the years. And I was telling Bo before we went on the air, one of the things that had been mentioned was that this game was too short. A lot of people said, listen, this game is too short, and also some said it was too easy. So starting with the DOS release of this, which I believe happened in 92, they started adding some scenes to make it a little bit longer. They made it a little more difficult, if you could believe it. And so the Amiga version of this game ends up, and also they fixed a lot of bugs. So the Amiga and the Atari ST versions of this are actually probably the shortest of the bunch, and probably the most bug-laden of the bunch, because a lot of that stuff got nixed.
Yeah, they had the misfortune of being released first.
Yeah. Now, that's not too bad, because me and Bo were talking earlier, and I said, listen, the Amiga version ended up getting the worst one. Bo about killed me, because he's like, wait a minute, this thing looks awesome, and he's right. It's certainly not the worst looking of the bunch, or the worst playing.
No.
Bo, you've played this on a few different consoles. What were your thoughts on giving this a whirl?
So I tried the Super Nintendo version first. And the Super Nintendo version does control better. The 3 buttons help out a lot, especially the jump button. That makes the initial sequence where you're trying to escape from the running beast a lot easier. However, it looks atrocious. Your hero is squashed down. He's pixely. I mean, he looks like garbage. And I don't know why that is. I know that the Super Nintendo was running at a different resolution than the Amiga, but I mean, I just don't understand why he had to be represented in that way. And the everything in the game just looks worse. It looks more pixely. And then I was like, well, maybe the Mega Drive version is going to be, a pretty identical port to the Amiga version, because it shares the 68,000 and all that stuff. No. It looked just as bad, and the music was even worse. Of course, the Genesis not known for its great, music and sound effects, but the sound effects in the Genesis version sounded like something out of the Atari 2600. I mean, it was horrible. So, in conclusion, this is one you want to stay far, far away from on the consoles, and cozy up to your favorite micro to play this one.
Here's something I read that I thought you might get a kick out of, Boat. So, Another World is the only game directly ported from the Super Nintendo to the Apple IIgs, which has the same 65C 816 microprocessor. I saw that on Wiki, and I thought that's odd. So you could say that this had a direct port. What an odd combo! But the Super Nintendo and the Apple IIgs. Bo, a couple years ago, we got this crazy habit of getting together on Sunday mornings and playing 3DO games. And we taped some of it. In fact, I'm sure this exists. So just for fun, I thought I would have a look at the 3DO version. This is out of this world. You can see a marked improvement in the graphic fidelity of this. Now, the funny thing is, I read an interview with the creator who was down on this. He didn't like this improvement at all. He said the way that they did this, it took away from the artistic feeling that he was going for with the way it was before. So he wasn't cool. He was not cool with the way that looked.
Well, I can see that. Anytime that you're changing, because obviously this is the vision of one man.
Yeah.
And anytime you do anything to change that, you run into problems. And speaking of the sequel, for Heart of Darkness, they essentially, he designed a whole bunch of stuff, and then what happened was the animations or the animations nor the game, which were developed entirely by Interplay. He had nothing to do with anything other than the initial concept. The animations and all of the code were developed by Interplay. He hated it. He made a public statement that the title did not represent his vision of the world he crafted, and disowned it altogether from being treated as an official sequel.
I will say, it didn't get
you
a
might
whole
have
lot of
heard
play.
that this thing was an Eric joint, but it was not.
So, but he was involved at least in the beginning.
He was involved
process.
in the very, very beginning stages of sketching out what he thought the game should be, but he didn't code it. He didn't do any of the animations. He was not involved.
I was wondering what he had been doing since, and he may have touched on this when you saw him in his thing. But he actually, I found this interesting. He actually has not done a ton since he did these games. But one thing he has done is he's in 2020 he had a VR title, Boat.
Really?
Yeah, he had a VR title come out. I'm trying to find what the name of it is, but it got pretty good reviews. So, and you could see where a guy like this would want to do a VR title, because I could see that, and it came with moderate success. But it's funny that a guy that came out with a game like this did not really do much more. There were just a few games he did after this. He did a game called From Dust. It's called
here we go.
Paper
You're ready.
Beast.
There's the sorry to interrupt. There's the 3 pixels.
Yeah. The game was the VR game is called Paper Beast. All right.
Okay.
It came
Paper
out
Beast.
on Windows and the PS4. So if that might be one you want to check into. But he's
Okay.
only credited with like a handful of games. It's quite odd to me that a guy of this caliber didn't do more. But I don't know if the industry passed him by, or maybe I know it almost killed him to make this one.
I was going to say,
when
you embark on a journey like this, a 2-year journey where you are the one-man show, things like that can affect the rest of your life. And I can see why, and this game was successful. There's nothing wrong with wanting to sort of exit at the top.
Yeah.
And sometimes, if you've got one good game in you, that's one more good game than 99% of the population have. So.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. We mentioned it earlier. I looked up some reviews for this to see how it fared. On Lemon, they give this an 8.7. I looked up Out of This World, Another World, and they're actually, they're eerily similar. They would be the exact same game.
Mm-hmm.
Amiga Action gave it an 89. Amiga Computing a 90. Amiga Force gave it a 90. Amiga Format an 82. Amiga Joker at 81. Again, we've mentioned that means you're gold. Amiga Mania Brother gave it an 83. And Amiga Power gave it an 89. And the one gave that to the total scores combined, the old cumulative magazine average, 87%, which I don't have a problem with that. You might think to yourself, that's real low, but if you consider the faults, there are people that aren't going to want to play this game. All right.
Yeah.
Or won't consider it is. I think it's a masterpiece. It's great to watch. It's one of those games that's a lot of fun to watch. This game, as having just covered Mirror's Edge, this game reminds me an awful lot of Mirror's Edge. Not in the gameplay, but in the fact that the difficulty, the way that they have you play the game, and the fact that it's so cinematic and fun to watch, that it's almost as fun to watch as it is to play it. So that
I think it's more fun to watch than it is to play it.
Yeah,
just like Dragon's Lair, you want to watch this twice. You want to watch the story all the way through, and then you want to watch all of the fun and interesting ways you can meet your demise.
Yeah. This did win some awards, as you can imagine. It won the Amiga Joker. It was number 2 best genre mix of '92. It made the 100 games of all time list in EGM. It made the 1001 games you must play before you die. You know, the stuff you would expect it to be on. Much heralded game. By the way, I looked this up on the eBay boat.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what to expect. I'll be honest with you. I just looked up. I will say I only looked up Out of This or Another World. I did not look up Out of This World, the English version. So get this, because I couldn't tell what this thing was going for because the prices, no one really bid on them. This sold complete in box in Australia for $118.
I can believe it.
They sold one in the UK.
That's 118 Australian, so that's probably like
that's US dollars.
That's US dollars. Okay.
In the UK, $218 US. And there's some guy. Now get this. This. I looked it up. They sold a sealed DOS copy of this thing for $49.99. That's almost $5,000, $5,000 US dollars, man. Wow. And the 3D overs I looked up just for fun. The long box for that's going for $110 US. So these are sold. Someone paid these prices. So these things ain't cheap. If you've got a copy of this back at the pad, hold on to it or make yourself some cash. You should be good to go. But this is one of those games, man, that we cover occasionally, and it is a mixed bag in a lot of ways. But I'm going to put it over. I think it's a lot of fun, and I do play it from time to time just to see if I can get better. They do have save codes in here, which are great. You can go through the whole game with them. So I think they understood that, hey, no one wants to play this stuff over and over. You don't want to watch that opening 3 times in a row. Let's put it that way.
Well, yeah, I mean, what they should have done, they were 80% of the way there.
Yeah.
What they should have done was say every screen should have been an opportunity for you to pick up where you left off.
Well, that was,
and they shouldn't have forced you to watch the cutscene. I guess the beginning, there's no way around it. They should have just started you out after you go through that first puzzle where you just have to swim up, starting you out. That just rankled me so much, having to swim up 8 billion times and climb out of that stupid
I had
pool.
the code standing by. I was ready for that. I did that once.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, moving on.
Yeah.
By the way, one quick note. I always think it's funny. There's a lot of parts of this game where you teleport, even up little ledges and stuff. And I read the developer said it was too hard and time consuming to animate the guy going up and down stairs. So he just put the little teleports in there.
That's true. And he actually took inspiration from Japanese animation, who they show movement in the same way. It's also the old, who was that old Looney Tunes animator, Chuck Jones, I think, did that kind of spiel a lot, where you just show the 5 or 6 lines of the colors of the character moving around. So it's kind of a neat, like I said, I highly, highly recommend, if you were at all interested in Another World, watching this GDC postmortem on Another World.
Yeah.
I found it extremely
I'm glad you
illuminating.
watched it, because there was some stuff I read that definitely contradicts it. Outstanding work, Boat. You've done it again.
We're going to start with Lord Soup. Lord Soup says, I'm going to have to give this 2 scores. At the time, the graphics were spectacular and the adventure evocative. But on replay years later, it feels kind of empty. Let me elucidate. Not that there's nothing to do or the world feels flat and flavorless. It's like the sense of otherworldliness doesn't convey itself well. It plays well. The rotoscopic animation is great. The coders have really squeezed the 68,000 for detail and smoothness in its world and characters. There's just something missing. 8 out of 10 if you get the vibe. 7 out of 10 if the vibe doesn't gel. Either way, a good game. Just shy of greatness. Alien Breeder writes, while I'm not sure I can call this a great game, I can call it an evolutionary one. In the same way that Shadow of the Beast was a technical marvel but not a great game, I think Another World falls somewhere into that same space. It blew people away with the intro, the smooth animation, and the full graphical presentation. The actual game was good, but not great. It was great for showing off to the NES crowd, though, and more playable than Shadow of the Beast. Overall, 8 out of 10.
He's got that right.
Yeah. Laurent Giroux. Says, another review straight from memory lane. He says, my experience with Another World limits itself to maximum 1 hour session, during which I desperately tried to get past the first 3 screens. No, seriously. I believe you, Laurent. I believe you. Back then, I could not muster the courage and energy to persist long enough to go any further. Now let's pause for a bit. Of course, I'd not bought the game. If I had, obviously I would have felt compelled to invest more effort into mastering the timing necessary to pass those damn poisonous snail slug things, but it kind of says something about games of the era that the very beginning of the game would be one of the hardest parts of the game. I recently bought a digital version of it for my Mac and managed to get through this time and found out that indeed the later parts were actually much simpler than this initial one. So conclusion, well, the game has many qualities, no doubt. Great atmosphere, fantastic animation, and even a relatively interesting story of silent friendship, but it alas was a product of its time. No infinite lives, punishing difficulty at the wrong moment. It's a great game for its era, no doubt, just too hard for this kitten. 7 out of 10. Play the digital version. It has saves and thus effectively infinite lives.
Very good.
Next up is Anthony Jarvis, creator of the Amiga show. Bring it back, Anthony. We need it. We need it in our lives. Another World brought the cinematic platformer into existence, Prince of Persia notwithstanding. This much-loved game is hard to review without rose-tinted specs, so I won't. I love it. It's entwined with my friendships, growing up, and shared memory. Story and action set pieces raised the bar, as did the graphics. The ability to switch mid-game to high-res mode was a revelation. The characters and setting drew me in, convincing me to complete it a number of times. It still sits as one of my favorite games on any system. Pajako 6502. We got a lot of reviews this week, Aaron.
Yeah.
Turns out lots of people have a lot to say about Another World. He says, the first time I saw this game was a moment in gaming history for me. The intro scene alone was unlike anything I'd seen before. The whole story and atmosphere is done brilliantly. But sadly, Another World has a dark secret. It's not a very good game. It's brutally unfair with lethargic controls that will lead you to die over and over. Having to repeat sections of the game you've already done, including unskippable cut sequences, is just bad game design. Another World deserves its place in history, but it isn't as good as we remember. 6 out of 10. Flack writes, I remember exactly where I was the first time I saw Another World. The biggest shock for me was the seamless transition between the introduction and actual gameplay. Like, I'm controlling this cartoon? Absolutely mind-blowing. There's a lot of trial by death, and I remember feeling lost a lot of the time. But it was amazing regardless. I remember thinking this is the closest I will ever feel to actually playing a movie. The gameplay is not as great as my memories of the game, but it's still fun. I should revisit this game with a walkthrough in hand someday. Pixels of Dawn writes, Another World is hands down one of the most beautiful games on the platform. The cinematic art style works so well and creates a unique atmosphere all its own. Is it hard? Yes, sirree! Then I think people misinterpret how long the game actually is. It's really quite short, just a couple of tricky sections that make it seem long. With a decent amount of skill, a careful approach, and a little luck, anyone should be able to get 2/3 of the way through without much trouble, although the cave section is pretty brutal, and I can see why people may need to skip that. And really, if you're struggling, the game has you covered with passworded checkpoints, although the position of some could use a little work, and no problematic live system. It's a great game to play, although I think this would benefit from a bit of atmospheric background sound and just more game. But it can't be denied that this is one of the best games in the Amiga portfolio. 8.5 out of 10. And finally, Paul, aka Hermsky, writes, a Herm Firm, 9 out of 10. This was the game that sprang me straight into the future, moving from the 8-bit era to the 16-bit world. This was the real Another World to me. I first spotted this game at a friend's house where I was wowed with that famous intro scene. I was hooked and was the motivation I needed to buy an Amiga. Lots of great reviews, and hey, this is the game that got Paul on board the Amiga train, so that's worth something right there, man.
It is quite a game, and it's certainly, if it's not something you've played before, if that's possible, for God's sakes, put it on your radar, because it is outstanding game.
All right, Aaron, it's time to move on to what's going on in our Amigos retro gaming community. Let's start things off with the old YouTube channel, huh?
Bam, all right. So, we had an interesting week, Boatster. Let's start off here with a little thing I like to call ARG Presents the Boat. Holy
Okay.
smokes. This week, my brother and I, that's the Brent, for you not in the know, we had a look at, this was chosen by the chat last week,
Chat choice.
female protagonist boat. It's another thing I'm surprised we never did up to this point. And you've heard me mention it a few times. I looked at Mirror's Edge, the 2000, I think it was 8 or 2006 release on the Xbox 360 and Windows. A little late in the day for stuff that we normally cover, but that's what we looked at. And my brother picked Perfect Dark on the N64. Have you played either one of these games much, Boatster?
Nope. Never played Perfect Dark or Mirror's Edge.
I will say, after playing a lot of Mirror's Edge this week, which is a game where it's like a parkour game. I'm sure you've at least seen footage of it.
Yeah, I know about it.
Playing Joanna Dark, it was like jumping into a cold pool after being at like a hot day. It was shocking the system, Boat, because you basically are running for your life and jumping and just doing non-violent stuff in Mirror's Edge. Then you jump into Perfect Dark and you're killing suckers like you would believe. I mean, and the funny thing about Perfect Dark that struck me is, like, when you start the level, like, you're killing people that are sitting at their desks. They're getting off elevators. They're just walking around. They're doing nothing. You just just mowing suckers down. It's super violent, Boat, even by my standards of violence. And every time you shoot them,
I never had the expansion pack for the N64, so I could never play this.
I had to dig mine up. But believe it or not, I own this cartridge somehow, but I don't. I don't have it here. But anyway, that's what we looked at this week. I thought it was an interesting look at the ladies running the show and games, and certainly two different girls, but also two that have some stuff in common. We had a lot of fun. We talked about how ladies sort of developed in gaming, because it wasn't necessarily wasn't the best road for the lady protagonist, Boat, along the way. So, but I think they hopefully have got it licked. But we had a good time with it, Boat. Thought provoking. Okay. Boat, we did a little show we like to call the 1200 XL show this week.
Yeah.
And this one was on one of your perennial favorites, Boat, Rally Speedway. Talk about this.
This is one of these games that every time I fire up the Atari 8-bit, I always have a couple laps with. This is a top-down racer. You think about Micro Machines perspective, but if you take out the sort of racing aspects of Micro Machines and the fact that you are a small thing racing around a big world, it's quite similar. This is Rally Speedway, John Anderson's Rally Speedway, and it's a whole lot of fun, Aaron. It's a whole lot of fun. This is a game that has a track editor, and it's a lot like, I guess it's based off the Intellivision game Auto Racing. It just moves at a much faster clip, but you're running around this sort of bucolic environment, this sort of suburban environment with houses and lakes and things. And but of course, the most fun comes when you crash and you see your little man roll out of the car on fire and then shake his fist in defiance at his burning wreck of a vehicle.
It's fun to play two-player too, Boat.
Yeah.
Good so
stuff. Check that out if you're into the Atari 8-bit.
Absolutely. It's worth seeing just the wrecks, in my opinion. Well, I forgot about this one. I had to set the automatic, but let's talk about this one. This was a couple weeks ago, Boat. I said, you know what? There has not been enough TI in my life. The TI 994A, Boat, you may have heard of it, from down in Texas. And,
down in Texas.
By God, we fired it up, Boatster. And I had the people in the chat lead me. I believe you had stopped in for a little bit of action that night. And we played some good stuff on this thing. Let me tell you something. I sort of was misinformed. This reminds me of the Vic stream I did. I feel bad. I've been kind of downplaying a couple of these systems, and they deserve a little more love.
It's funny. I always thought the TI was at the same technology level as the Coco. And don't get me wrong. I love me some Coco. But this thing blows the Coco out of the water in terms of what it can do. I was floored when you were playing these games, Aaron. I was floored.
Yeah. There was some real good stuff in here, Boat, including a top-shelf version of Donkey Kong and a tippity-top version of Demon Attack, Boat. We were very impressed with
that Demon Attack is something else, man.
Yeah, I was real impressed. We played a little bit of everything on this thing, Boat. I mean, all kinds of crap I never heard of. We played some stuff you would have heard of, Popeye, your Cuberts, anything you could think of. If you want to hang out and just watch some TI, maybe you haven't experienced much Texas Instruments TI 994A, and you're kind of interested to dip your toe in the pool. If you haven't checked out anything Frodo's done, check this out. We had a lot of fun, And also, one thing I liked about it is everything worked pretty much without a whole lot of hassle. So it's always a good thing on the old stream, Boat. So, Boat, I'm going to let you speak on this. This is Wings. Tell the people what you're up to, Boat.
So a couple of years ago, you were like, man, you know those old shows that we did way back in the dark ages? What we should do is we should go back, we should cut out all of the news that's no longer news anymore, and just get right to the review and put that up on YouTube, because that's really what's going to stand the test of time with these shows. And at the time, I was like, Aaron, you're out of your mind. Well, guess what, Aaron? You're not out of your mind. You had a winner on your hands, and I finally came through with your suggestion. I don't know what's taken me so long.
Well, I don't.
But this thing,
I wouldn't
put
give
this
me
thing
that
out
much
today.
credit.
I put this thing out a couple days ago.
Yeah.
And man, it's taken off. People love hearing about us talking about games, Aaron. It's weird.
Yeah.
And this is Wings. I'm going to remaster probably, one of these every couple weeks.
Yeah.
And put it out there. This episode originally aired on January 28th, 2016, almost 5 years ago, Aaron. So a long time ago. And basically, this is the very early stages of the show where we didn't have video, it was audio only. So I've got some gameplay footage up there to look at, and some that animated GIF of us talking. So if you're interested in the way we talked about games from way back then, because it is much different, we're much more subdued and laid back. It sounds like we're heavily medicated. I'm not going to lie to you. It was a different feel to the Amigos back then, and we talk about Wings, which of course is one of the all-time Amiga classics.
You sort of revisionist history this, and I just want to correct you a little bit. I did mention this years ago, and you were like, "Oh, no, I wouldn't do it." And then this time around, you're like, "You did this. I didn't know you were doing it." And you're like, "What do you think of that?" And I'm like, "I don't know, Boat. I don't know. You put a lot of work into that, Boat. I think that's pointless. Pointless move." And so we actually flip flopped. And so we can both say we were both right, we were both wrong. And so I'm on board. Hey, if people want to go back. Now, the one thing that I did notice, that, as far as I could tell, is you took out my maudlin speech about the trials and tribulations of war, Boat. Which that's the one thing I remember about this episode. I go in that long anti-war diatribe. I don't know what was on my mind that day when we did that episode, but that's the one thing I remember.
Well, that's interesting. I did not mean to do that. I was scrubbing forward into the episode until what I thought was the beginning. So, man, I apologize.
Well, I may have done it. I may have delivered it after the news or something, but I definitely remember doing it, because I remember like days later thinking to myself, why did I do that on this fun, happy video game show? I don't know what I was thinking. So there you go.
Well, if you want to listen to the complete episode, of course, it still exists in podcast form. Just go to anchor.fm/Amigos podcast, and you can listen to every single episode since episode 1 in its entirety.
Very good. Also, like the old animations there where you still have all the hair.
Yeah.
See, that's good stuff.
It's a glorious time when I had hair.
Well, good stuff, Boat. You're a hardworking man, my friend. Let's
you.
talk about another hardworking man. In fact, I'm going to give this guy double props here in a minute. This is our good friend, the Jack Flack, Boat. And this is his most recent entry here, where I only caught the second half of this particular show, where he plays You Was Ear. Or what's the British way? Say it like you came straight from the streets of Sussex, Boat.
You was here.
There you go. And then I can pronounce the other one, Galaga. Now, he played some Galaga, which
Galaga.
I did catch that. Oh, no, it's not. Well, it could be either one. It's funny, I was just listening to Retro Bygones podcast this week, and he pronounces Galaga the way I've never heard it pronounced. Galaga.
Oh, my god.
So there you go. Everyone's got their own interpretation. He's a big fan of Galaga. And I'll take Galaga or how'd you pronounce it?
Galaga.
Yeah, there you go. Either way, anyway, it goes. And also, I should also mention that this It Was Here. Flack actually is listed in the credits of this game, and was giving away free copies of the game. But
I will always remember this stream. You know why, Aaron? Because
Why?
Flack normally starts streaming at 8 o'clock sharp our time, 7 p.m. Central Time. And in this particular occasion, he was a little bit late getting started. I think he probably started at 8:20. And so I was waiting. I was hanging out on Twitch with Pix. I was watching one of Pix's favorite streamers, and I was chatting away on that. 8 o'clock runs around. Flack's not there. And I was like, man. He's probably out. He's probably got some band function with his daughter or something like that. So I started watching this god-awful documentary on the making of Paranoid by Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
And I was captivated by this thing. Ozzy just stumbling around and stuff. Yeah. And then after I was getting ready to head to bed, I noticed that Flack had streamed and I was not there. So
don't worry, I repped this, boat. I repped this on that the end of that stream. And I enjoyed it. Flack's always an entertaining cat. Plus, I won a free game. So... you could have won.
Congratulations,
but
man. That's awesome.
I'm a winner, Bode. And so, what do you think of this Galaga for the C64, Bode?
We talked about this on This Week in Retro.
Looks good,
this is a fantastic looking port.
Yeah, it looks real nice. So, yeah, check out the Flackster. Always a good time. By the way, I just finished up listening to the last Sprite Castle, and it was a very good one. And I would say, I don't know what he's got coming out this week. I think it may be... another Sprite cast. I'm not 100% sure what's on the agenda, but he's always got something weekly. He never misses, Boat. He's like Old Faithful. He's not. And a few years ago, I couldn't say that about Flack, but now he's like he always gets it done. Speaking now, this right here, let's tip our hat to our good buddy Frodo now, because I wouldn't wish this stream on my worst enemy. The first years of the Mattel Aquarius, coincidentally, the last years. I might add. Me and the Brit tackled the old Aquarius just the other day. That's not true. We tackled it just the other year, and it was not good. I always thought the Aquarius was sort of like a souped up in television. Wrong. It's a souped down in television, way down. And so here's Frodo gutting his way through the first year, 2.5 hours of Aquarius. Man, if someone get Patreon this guy up and let him buy some brain medicine, because this would suck the life right out of you. You know, I've got a follow through on this, Boat. So I'm looking around on the old Facebook Marketplace the other day. Guess what a guy in Jackson, Ohio is selling? He's got get this. He's got a Super Intellivision, and it was the one that had the keyboard and the Aquarius
I saw that on Facebook Marketplace, too.
Yeah, so, see, we know. Now, and I thought to myself, where is just Jackson, Ohio?
He didn't want a lot of money for it, either. He wanted like $20 for it.
Listen, I'm not interested in driving halfway to Timbuktu to get this thing. If it was closer, I might. You know, so you saw it. Did you have a thought about going to get it?
I did. Jackson is not super far away, but it's also not super close. I think Jackson's probably a good hour drive from here.
Is it worth it? God, no. But it was the keyboard. It was the expansion thing. Had you ever seen a television with super game console written on it like that?
No.
That's what got my attention.
Yeah.
So if you live anywhere near Jackson, Ohio, the last thing you want to do is get in a fight in Jackson, Ohio on a Saturday night. As the song doesn't say. But if you're anywhere near there, you go pick that up. Let us know how it turned out, Boat. But we won't be going, Boat. What did you and your good pal, the Neilster, get up to this week on This Week in Retro?
This Week in Retro last week. And we talked about all kinds of stuff. Let's see, this would have been episode 53 of This Week in Retro?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we talked about, the big news, of course, was Street Fighter 2 on the NES.
Yeah.
This is I don't know what to make of this thing, because the people were going crazy over it, but now it turns out that it doesn't work on hardly anything, and it still doesn't work on real hardware, and it has all kinds of bugs in it. So just like so many things, lots of promise, lots of hype, and maybe not ready to deliver yet.
I'll listen to this show, and you guys are talking about this being based on a Chinese or a knockoff bootleg Street Fighter 3, I believe it was. I've gotten that on one of my slightly gray market Nintendo NES multi-cards. You know what I'm saying? So I have played, because when I looked at the graphics on this, I was like, wait a minute, that looks familiar. And this is like the souped up version of that. Well, that stinks. So I mean, they would have to soup it up to the nines to make this a fun game. But it did amuse me that you guys were speaking about it.
Of course, we talked about Galaga and how great the C64 conversion is.
How much coverage does Galaga get in the retro community in a given week? I mean, it's
Listen, people love Galaga and people love the C64. So there you go.
My cabinet
this was
worth
$1,000
now.
This was an interesting story. Somebody bought Billy Mitchell's old website.
Yes.
And now that site is devoted to debunking all of Billy Mitchell's claims.
Yeah, come on now. Why can't we play nice? Give the Mitchells some love here. But I know everyone hates Billy, by God, because he made a couple little. We've all been there, a little bit,
Who among us hasn't faked the meme high score every
listen,
once in a while?
I couldn't fake a score because if I had submitted one to like the high score challenge, they'd know it was fake if it was anywhere near the top. And they'd be like, "What the hell is this? Get that out." So yeah, but I heard about that. But we'll see what happens. I don't know. Buying a site just to screw with a guy, I don't know, man.
That is pretty trollish.
And I think what really
finally,
gets me.
Hold on a second. There's a guy in the Netherlands, Aaron, and it's not Frodo and El. Turns out there's multiple guys in the Netherlands. I always thought Frodo was like the only guy living over there. It was him and a bunch of ladies. But it turns out that's not the case. There's another guy, and he runs a camping store, Aaron, and not just any camping store. It's not really a camping store at all. It's like a campground. And the campground is run on an Atari ST. He's got this program that he developed sometime in the mid '80s that allows him to see what spots are occupied and what aren't. And this is no text-based thing. This is a graphical representation of his campground. He's clicking on stuff. And get this, Aaron, he turns this thing on in April and turns it off in November. He does not turn off the machine throughout that entire period.
Yeah.
And he said he bought this thing when the machine came out in like '85, and it's never given him any problems. What do you think about that?
This also reminds me of the school that had the Amiga running the heating and cooling for like all those years. Remember that? Listen, they're durable, brother. That's what I think. The ST, keep in mind, and these things weren't. These things were built to low prices so they could sell a bunch of these early STs. So you would wonder what was in them. Well, it turns out it put some good stuff in them. Hey, we've both got Ataris. They still work great. All my Ataris work. I've never had a single problem with any of my Ataris over the years. So I'm not surprised, to be honest with you. And I think it's neat that a guy said, sure, why should you change? I can't figure it out. I think he made a good move, Bode.
Yeah. So if you are at all interested in hearing what me and Neil from RMC have to say about this week's hottest retro stories, check out our YouTube channel over at This Week in Retro.
I also want to say that I was pleased that now I don't agree with this entirely, but I like the fact that Neil referred to Billy Mitchell as a heel. I laughed. Yeah. I laughed kind of hard about that.
Yeah, when I heard that, it turns out, Aaron, that your carny wrestling lingo is spreading far and wide throughout the retro community.
That's the way I like it. And by the way, I will say he does a ton of charity stuff, so it's not like he's Darth Vader. I will say that. Right. One last thing, but I want to go talk about. By God, I'm going to put it over because I've worked hard this week. We ran a show last Friday, Boat. By God. They said, don't do it. They said, what are you doing? You can't pull that off. Well, they were sort of right, but we did it anyway. It's a little thing we like to call conversations from the dark side, Boat.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Boat, this is an overnight show where we talk about the strange, the bizarre, the supernatural, the macabre, if you will. And in the debut episode last week, these are done live, by the way. Live, we did what's the strangest thing you've ever seen, Boat? We take calls on Discord, and it was an interesting show. We went about an hour and a half, I believe, Boat, on that one. And we're coming back. This is all October in celebration of Halloween. We're coming back. I'll be running this one tonight. Boat's going to be on assignment tonight. Tonight's topic, dreams and nightmares, Boat, as voted on by the Discord and Twitch communities. And so we will see how it goes. I have added several methods of communication this week. I'll take text messages. I'll take voice messages. I'll take carrier pigeon if you can get hold of me. I'll take anything that'll fill 2 hours, brother. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you're interested in checking us out, we'll be on at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time on Twitch. It'll be Conversations to the Dark Side. I'll be flying solo, so I'll need all the help I can get, Boatster.
Yeah, and just a reminder, you can call in. Just go to bit.ly/conversations-from-the-dark-side.
A lot of dashes.
Wish I could have redone that.
Yeah, that was.
I've done every other permutation, and everything else is taken on Bitly. So deal with it.
There you go.
But you can join that Discord server and call in and tell us about your dreams. Tell us about your nightmares. We want to hear from you.
Yeah, I would love to hear from. I would like to hear some people outside of West Virginia too this week because we had a lot of local callers. We want them all.
Yeah, we were coast to coast in the way that Martinsburg to Sarita Canova is coast to coast on the last show.
Well said, Boat. So there you go, Boat. That's all we got in that department. You're killing me here. What's next, Boat?
Man, I don't even know. No, we're going to talk about the high score challenges, Aaron.
Yeah,
we got
man.
high score challenges coming out the wazoo on the old Discord channel. So we run, and by we, I mean people other than me. And so, first off, we have the Amigos High Score Challenge, which is rough and tumble. You can get in on that sort of Metal Slug-esque shooter released for the Amiga. On the Specky High Score Challenge side of things, we've got Mikey. It's still going down, Mikey, Aaron. We will be covering Mikey here at the end of the month on our Sinclair,
man.
so you can take a trip down memory lane and post a high score. This is open to every member of our Discord community.
Who's got that game in their memory? I mean, honestly, someone grew up and they're like, "Oh, look, they're covering Mikey. That's one of my childhood favorites." I want to shake your hand, pal.
So that's what we got going on the old Discord side of things, Aaron, and that's going to wrap up our community updates. But it's not time to wrap up the show yet, because it's time to announce the winners of last week's Patreon Song Challenge. Now, last week I had visions of Jason Warrens and Scumboy and Retro Rewind and L. Curtis Boyle dancing around in my head as I performed Sundown by Gordon Lightfoot.
Oh, man.
We had a lot of winners this week, Aaron. People dig the Gord, is what he's known as.
Is it really?
Buck Owens? No. TSI Matt, Wing Chun Wolf, L. Curtis Boyle, Paul Kitching, Alien Breeder, Joeski Rock, Mitsuyama, Andy Craig, TMX Online, and Jigglebox all got the correct answer. Now, Aaron, we got something special this week. Normally, I don't give away the Patreon song, but this week, I'm going to give you a little hint. We involved everybody, both bands this week, the June Bugs and the other Patreon band. We got everybody together. There's 9-part vocal harmonies. We're going to do one of Queen's biggest hits, starring me playing the piano and everybody else just kind of singing back up. There's lots of guitar solos. Be prepared for it. This is going to knock your socks off.
This was
gutsy.
Full
cinematic event.
This was gutsy.
Hit it, Aaron. Mr. Chip Peter Price, Herman V. Wonderly Cheshire, Mark Richardson, David Hurt, Chris Edwards, Rambo K. Romo K, David Terry, Drew Carlos, Matthew Mobius, the Phantom Magnus, Seth Yates, Alistair Fiend, Chris Russell, Dave Z, George Rosansky, The Amiga Show, Danny Crabtree, Super Family King, Crazy Loomis, William Victor Scott, Heavy Systems Inc., Bundy, Frag Lord, Mark Byland, Olaf Hope, Hermsky, Jonah, a.k.a. Simulant, Alien Breeder, Dave Velociraptor, Calbert Boyle Denson, Daniel Williams, Luke Hudson, Bob the Bass, Frodo and Al, Soul Incisor, Tech Mage Jurgen, Mr. Cola, Bernard Drew Lucas, Jared Eddington, Zorg Leper Infection, Simon Ledge, Captain Crispy, Kilobytes and Caffeine, Gary, Heather Free Lunch, Kate Fox, David Pickford, Cameron Armstrong, Andy Jones, Lobsterman made a 10-minute Amiga Retro Cast, Bernard Quinn, RC, Tim Drew, Joseph Harrison, Kyle Letter, Rob O'Hara, Matthew Aaron Moore, Andy Craig, Shonzo, Bart Big Rolenberg, Sandra Bone Show, The Zombie, Leif Kellan, Alan Kebab, Chicote, John Marshall, Matthew Perron, Ricky DeRocha, Creepy Dead Boy, Vegas CTC, Slow Norris, Stefan Sorgard Mortensen, Ed Van Helland, Christopher Hassel, Ravi Abbott, Chris Foltz, Lauren Giroux, Graham Debke, Adam Batters, B. O'Brien's Ritual, and Vintage Gary Hucker, Paul Bossman, Duncan Styles, tapes from the crypt, Josh Adam Bradley, Jonas Rulo, THT, Eric Nelson, Kim Tommy Rubenstein, Ben Bacon, Ruben Barracuda, Darren Coles, Jason Walls, Fixes at Dawn, go, Bjorn Barman.
That's horrible.
Thank you.
That was horrible. What was that dance you were doing?
Listen, I've got all kinds of moves. You don't even know.
It looked like moves you would do in the park if you're some kind of masher. Burn that raincoat immediately.
You know, that I got to take hats off to Lobsterminator because he programmed that whole thing in him, in himself, and I mean, he's the man when it comes to tracking, and so thanks to him, and thanks to Graham. I think Graham was the guy that I actually had the idea to do that particular
Graham,
song.
you talking about Graham W. Vebke?
Graham W. Vebke.
Graham,
right?
Why? Holy smokes, Bode.
If you know the answer to this week's Patreon Song Challenge, please send me an email, john@amigospodcast.com.
I would hope they know it. It was written on the screen. It was written on the screen.
Listen, not everybody reads the screen. Not everybody pays attention to the show when they watch it. Sometimes they just
we don't.
So here we go, everybody. It's time to announce. Speaking of people that are watching and reading the screen right now, we got all the fine people watching us live on Twitch. Thank you guys so much for subscribing. Dan, Daha Crabs MTG, giving out gift subs left and right. We love Daha Crabs.
Thanks,
Can't
Crabs.
wait to play some Gloomhaven with him coming up soon when that's released.
It's a magic.
Lumen 808, back to 8-bit with Hermsky, Frodo and L, Scumboy, Texas Foosballer, Blue Jellyfish, Jigglebox, Am I Steph, Pi Gravity, Great Owl G, Super Fama King, Eeyore 4077, Wing Chun Wolf, Oil of Hope, Mind Racks, Brock 101, Urso Bard, Air Jury, Pixel Smack, Bite Links, Negsol, Jedimon, Ben 666, McChessers, Retro Jerry, Butterbird, Robin Wendell, Edvin Helland from the Man Cave, Jay Botchers, Real Retro Dude, Macintosh Librarian, Orom, Mr. Toast 6502, Math Dufort, Mitsuyama, Still Adolescing, Lobsterminator, L. Curtis Boyle,
Oh hell,
The Card 2010, John Marshall 3, HSEI Ken, Arctic Cube, Happy Coding ZX, Buck Owens, Zoin Suck 1, Flip Flop, Gary Heather, Super Tech Boy, Pixels at Dawn Gaming, Daha Crabs MTG, Moo Monzames, Long Shanks 7. Thank you guys so much for subscribing to us on Twitch.
particularly Zoid Suck.
Wow. Yeah, I'm glad he finally joined up. I heard he was on the fence for a while.
Zoid Suck.
So,
we're putting you over, Suck.
Aaron, next week on Amigos,
Yeah.
you're going to be in for a treat. This is another Level Lord pick. You know, Level Lord don't play no casual games. Level Lord's all in it to win it.
Oh God.
On the deep, the complex, and the mind bending, Aaron.
Okay.
We're going to be playing a space trading simulator called Millennium 2.2. Aaron, Millennium 2.2. We're going to be doing that next week on Amigos.
I've never heard of this one, Boat, so oh man. All right, man, we'll do it. We'll try it.
All right. And until then, guys, thank you as always for listening. We will see you next week. Until then,
Adios.